All right, first there's a few disclaimers. I might say okay too much. My fingernails might be too long, and I might lose my train of thought. I might go into a rant. It's just part of the being 70 years old and really being into the hobby. Now, this is a Collins radio that I bought for $530, and it's a piece of shit for $530. It was overpriced. Should be about $75 with shipping, but it is what it is. I'm going to work on it a little bit each day, even though the AM broadcast section is not the greatest. But I think to myself, maybe I can make it sort of a learning tool for you guys. Now, you may see down in here, there's a bank of wafer switches. And there's another set here. There's two more wafer switches there. Now, I'm a big proponent of cleaning any kind of electronic contacts with, this is a pink pearl, an eraser. All right. I don't use any type of chemicals because chemicals will do to a wafer switch what's wrong with these wafer switches. These wafer switches have been cleaned with that chemical. I won't mention its name because you might get confused and remember it and buy it. All the connections of the wafer switches, they're jet black. They're totally oxidized past anything you've ever seen. And there was a cover over this. So I'll show you a wafer switch like most people do. Now here's a wafer switch. Here's the back. They tell you to take a pencil and clean. And you can clean the tracks. You got to be careful not to bend the contacts. And it takes, let me see, make sure I'm in the frame. Oh, I hate this camera. It works backwards. And it takes, gently massage it. And it takes, I'd say, maybe 20 swipes to make it shiny. I hope you can see that it's shiny now. And you clean it. And to clean the contacts that grip like this, okay, those, I said okay again, you take a piece of paper, printer paper, rip off a piece, and you could tell two things. You go under the contacts that go on the tracks, and you should feel a resistance when you push the piece of paper under the contact. All right, so and you're going to have to work it under there. Now I'm doing it in front of the camera. Wait, let's get it up in the frame. And it's a little more difficult to do. I'm going to have my glasses on. In other words, you work the paper underneath the contact and move it back and forth, and that cleans the contact. But do the track, the movable track first. So that's what people show you, and then they tell you use WD-40 or some type of chemical. After you clean the copper, take some Vaseline on a Q-tip and put a skim coat on it, and that'll preserve it, that'll lubricate it. That's it. That's all you have to do. Now, that sounds so easy. It's not. When you hold a switch like this, it's easy. When it's in the radio, it's another story. Now, I use pieces of pink pearl. This is a regular pencil eraser, pink pearl. You should still be able to buy this. Now, this is my favorite stuff. This used to have a string on it. I'm going to have to locate these again. And this is a 400. You pull the string, and then it becomes a pencil eraser, and it's a little more aggressive. We used to use them at TRW to clean the fingers on the ends of circuit boards. And even really bad ones, it would brighten them up. And then you dust it off. You make sure you don't do this over any electronic equipment with gears or motors. Now, the next thing is you'll see a video, someone will say on conference, use a pencil eraser on the back of a pencil. And that is good. That is good. But when you're in there, you can't see where that little metal ferrule that holds that piece of rubber can hook. It can do damage, and you might not see it. Now this has some damage over in here. Someone's bodged this radio. As bad as the radio is, it's been bodged on top of that. Well, anyway, you got to use something a little more inventive. Now, I went to Harbor Freight and I bought these pair of hemostats, or they call them locking pliers. Now, when this thing's closed, this should be on its first click, and it's not. So if you put a piece of rubber or eraser in the jaws of this thing, when you tighten it down, one click, it'll slowly cut through the rubber. It's still usable. Play around with it. You can get in just so far, but this is the one I use. This is the really long hemostats from Harbor Freight. And this is what I've been working with, little at a time, to save my sanity. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wafers, and some of them are double-sided. Some of them are going to be a real bitch to get in there. But this is what I'm going to use to clean them. And it has to be done because they're jet black, and it takes 20 strokes. I've done several test spots. It takes 20 strokes on the black oxide or whatever that is on there. That could be old grease. It takes 20 strokes of this type eraser, pink pearl, in order to get down to the bare copper. And I just wanted to show you that. And that's how you do it. And yes, you can spray this again with that crappy liquid and move the switches back and forth, and then it'll work, and in 2 or 3 months it'll go bad again. It's like people that use eye drops on their eyes. Their eyes itch. They put the drops in the eyes, and then later on they have a different problem. The eye becomes addicted to the drops. So in other words, your eyes are not naturally itching from something, from being overused. They're itching because they want the eye drops. And that's the stuff in life you got to watch out for. And yeah, I use plain old Q-tips with a drop of alcohol. After I clean up with the eraser, I come in with the alcohol, blah, 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 and then I put on a skim coat of Vaseline. I put it on the Q-tip and work it in, and you know, try not to get the fuzz all hooked up on the contacts. A lot of this is just common sense, but most people don't have common sense. You tell them how to do something, and then you walk over and see what they're doing. You're like, you don't even recognize. And the way they interpret things is totally different than the way you explain it. And being a repair guy and a person that tries to solve a problem, it's really a horrible ride. Now, this woman called me up. I used to do landscaping. This woman calls up and she says, I put hundreds of dollars into my lawn every year and it never looks right, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't really a great lawn guy. I mowed and I edged. So I went over there and I walked around the property and didn't have any shaded areas. I just noticed whoever was cutting her lawn was cutting it too short. I mean, way too short. So I said to her, I said, look, we have to cut this lawn a little higher, and then I come every 2 weeks. It's not going to cost you a lot of money. I said, I'll put some seed down for you. And I didn't charge her. I roughed up some spots. I put some seed down. I cut the lawn higher. I dug out a few weeds, and the lawn started looking incredible. And I showed up the next time, and I mowed the lawn. She wasn't home. And the neighbor come out and says, this woman's never had a lawn this good. And I said, yeah, I expect this to become a problem. I said, there's something wrong with her. So the next time I'm there, some other guy's talking to me, and she's coming up the street shaking her head. I said, here, this is how it goes. I just finished. And she kept complaining, you don't cut the lawn short enough. I said, look, I said, you go up on the Scott's website. It tells you to put the lawnmower over a flat surface, and you measure from the cutting edge of the blade to the ground, and that tells you, you know, say it's 2.5 inches. And then during the summer, you bring the lawnmower up a little bit more and leave the grass a little bit longer so it can handle the hotter weather. And she wasn't buying it. She wanted that lawn cut the height she wanted it cut. And I just looked at her, I said, look, I said, you don't owe me for this cut. I'm out of here. I said, I'm not going to stand here and argue with you. You told me you could never have a nice lawn. You now have a nice lawn. Do whatever you want to it. And I put my stuff in the car and drove off. And then I had one woman that all the neighbors come out and said, this woman's a cuckoo clock. And she worked for the post office, and she lost her husband. They said she's off the rails. She's starting to sue the neighbors around her. So I show up there, and she wanted me to cut all the bushes back from the line. So I cut all the bushes back from the line, got that done. And then I went around, and I walk around the property after I'm done. And I come home, and she's screaming at me over the phone, you get over here. So I load the car up. I drive all the way over there. And I'm walking over the property. I said, look, I can't see what's wrong. She says, look over there at that neighbor. In the middle of the back of the guy's back lawn is a weed sticking up. She says, you didn't do that. I said, that's not your property. She says, you should know that would bother me. I said, look, lady, you find yourself another landscaper. I said, I'm out of here. But your perception of what you're going to do for somebody or telling them what to do, you got to realize they're mentally ill people. They're borderline mentally ill. They don't know they're mentally ill. Now, I always tell people I'm crazy, and I can prove it because I can tell you stuff like, if I put the garbage out in front of the house and they come, I have to go right out there and bring that garbage pail in, because I was trained to do that at my house by my parents, and now I can't do anything else until that garbage can comes in. It distracts me. I'm easily distracted. And I have all these little quirks that I have to work with. Like I tell you, sometimes I'll say okay a lot. And that's from hanging with this one guy I hang with. He says okay incredible amounts of time. And I started doing it originally, okay, as Pee Wee Herman would say. I used to do an intro to my videos. And then what happened was I started saying okay as like the end of a sentence. And I had people leaving me messages. You say okay too much. Your fingernails are too long. How come you don't list a schematic for the thing? I did a power supply for the BC348, and I told you that the numbers of the power supplies. I explained that one fed the filament, the other one fed backwards. I told full wave bridge, capacitor. I told it's basic stuff. If you're able to build that power supply, you're able to take my instructions and build it. If you need a schematic, you got two things planned. You're going to put it in a drawer somewhere as one of your keepsakes, or you're going to redraw it and pass it off as one of your videos. I don't trust anybody anymore, because I do find videos that are copies of one of mine. And I tell you different things because that's how I do it. Now, the pencil eraser, I've mentioned that before, and other people made comments, yes, that's what they use. But other people use these spray cleaners, and yeah, they do work. If you're getting rid of a radio, and you just spray it into the switches, move the switches back and forth, pass it on to the next guy. And this radio, I can tell this radio's been sprayed several times, and the lid's been on this thing. There's no way you could say cigarette smoke got in there or grease or any. These wafers have been sprayed heavily, and in the cleaners is a bit of acid, and acid works. It does work, but it continues to work on the copper, and the copper, to protect itself, produces a really thick, heavy oxide, like on a dark old penny. And if you take an eraser and run it on a penny, you'll see it cleans it up in like 20 strokes. And that's the system I use. And having it on the end of a hemostat makes it easier to get in there. Where's the hemostat? There's the camera over here. And you want to make sure you leave a little extra sticking out there, and you don't want to hook those connectors on the wafer switch. Be very gentle. Make sure you can really see what you're doing. And that's it. You'll have no problems. You'll clean it up. It takes a while. Like I said, what did I say, Ed? 6 to 8 of these wafer switches, and they're double-sided. So you're talking 16 sides I have to meticulously clean. I hate this radio. I hate this radio with a passion. $530, and it's in terrible shape. You know, in the pictures it looked great, but that's my problem. I made a mistake. You know, it is what it is now, and I'm trying to make the best of it. And I'm thinking, okay, I can show you different things on this radio and make a video about it. And wafer switches, they're the bane, I think it's the right word, bane of any radio. Now, most radios might have one wafer switch in it for maybe 2 bands, AM and FM, and maybe shortwave. This thing's got 30 bands on it, and it's got buku amount of wafer switches. I think that's it for now. All right, that's it.